आपसे उधर मत दीजिए, मतलब आप इधर देखिए, बस अभी हाँ नहीं, वो तो वहाँ पर है अंदर भी है ना, मतलब वो रेल्स भी आ गए हैं और भी आ गए, ठीक है Krishna Kumar. You want to be there? Yeah, both of them. They can be just coming there. Actually, you are there. So, Dr. Nath was my doctor of three universities. Indian University का alumni है, Indian University वाले वाले। ठीक है। डॉक्टर हरियाणा it looks like my he looks like his beard. It just looks like my supervisor and mostly head of department of this very university. आप alumni तो है, दक्षिण यूनिवर्सिटी के अंदर फर्स्ट बैच के बायोटेक्नोलॉजिस्ट हैं। बैच को हम लोग जाने किसी अंदर मैं आपसे सुनिए आई alumni बोले नहीं, मैं तो कह रहा हूँ कि आपका लुक जो है मेरे सुपरवाइजर सर जॉली तो उन्हीं की तरह मैं शिफ्ट खुद का पास हूँ तो सर सेक्रेटरी एमएससी है मैं कंफर्म की बात कर मैं इसी टाइप का एमएससी 2000 तो हमारे आज तो आपके दुनिया में और नवीन चीजें होते नहीं हाँ आज हो गए यूनिवर्सिटी का अपना ग्रामर होता है, अपना ज्ञान होता है। ये तो अच्छा होता है। Dr. O.P. Gupta ji, Dr. Shivaji Bohari, Dr. Nath Sahab, member board of governors of our university, Harijan ji, our principal professor, Dr. Gulnar ji, Dr. Swain, he is our associate dean, taking over. Krishna Kumar and Mr. Viva-Voce. His Viva-Voce is going to be there on Saturday. So he's also first class, so he has come to learn and also to give one. Happy welcome to all of you. Today's open Viva-Voce session of Mr. Krishna Kumar and also well done.
So the format was very followed by the Krishna Kumar is the presentation of after that they could be the questions from the school exam. After the evaluation is over, then the floor is open to others also. So this is completed that session by the after the exam.
Very good morning to all. Respected professors, Namaskar. So with the kind permission, I would like to start my presentation. Topic is evaluation of investment performance and perception of investors in Bangalore and suburban area with respect to USS mutual funds. This will be my agenda for the presentation. So I'd like to start with my introduction and my research motivation. So I'm Krishna Kumar, I'm coming from Bangalore, I work from Bangalore. So I'm a commerce graduate and law graduate from Bangalore University, and I've done my MFA from ICFAI. I hold certifications of CFA, CFP, CHP, excellent professional, and then I also have certification in financial investments from CIS UK, and also GAR certification in banking risk and regulations. I've been in the professional industry, serving financial industry for almost 20 years, from 1990 to 2012, 20 plus years, of which almost 15, 16 years was in equity markets, and then I moved out to personal finance and then wealth management. After finishing my CFP program, I actually moved to personal financial planning. So I started actually into academics because of passion for teaching. I started off as an visiting faculty, and then that's playing out for personal finance from 2006 onwards. That actually brought me a lot of interest in mutual funds and personal finance. So as a personal financial planner, I always used to advise clients with regard to mutual funds and accelerating mutual funds. So my interest for mutual funds started from those days. Presently, actually, I'm working in Bangalore, ICFAI University as head of Department of Commerce. So coming into the academic industry, I felt there was a big need for me to actually finish my PhD or do my PhD and get the highest qualification that we actually aspire for. And that's why my quest for PhD started. I enrolled for my PhD in 2012. The topic selection was completed in November, and then I moved on to my literature review and then collection of secondary and primary data. So the milestone that I actually achieved, and then I made 5 focus presentations and 1 submission Viva before this, and this has been my journey so far. After my PhD pursuit. Now coming to the topic, as you understand, capital formation is very vital for the sustained economic development, and the financial system enables capital formation and savings by linking savers and investors. So efficient financial investments allows free investments based on risk and return appetite of the investors, and in that regard, mutual funds play a very important role, providing investors a wide range of investments with varying amounts of risk and return. So we know a lot of different types of mutual funds with varying types of what we call aspects of risk and return. The range of risk and return parameters, investors can select this funds based on the objectives, and equity funds are one such type of mutual funds. So as you understand, equity represents long-term risk capital in the economy, and equity mutual funds pool a large amount of money from small investors and then put them into equity shares and related securities. And it's been a very good means of procuring long-term risk capital from large number of investors and good for the finance system of the economy. The government of India, understanding this, actually introduced this ESS mutual fund schemes in order to bring about more equity participation of small and retail investors in equity markets. So in the year 1990, this proposal was made by the finance minister in his budget speech, and based on that proposal, ESS funds actually were floated by AMCs in the year 1991. So as we understand, equity mutual funds are a type of equity mutual funds which incentivize the investor for the investment made into the fund. So the incentive is in the form of tax deduction or tax rebates. So over time there has been some change regarding regulations with regard to what we call tax deductions or tax rebates. So initially it was a tax deduction of 10,000 rupees, then it became a rebate of 10,000, and then it became a reduction benefit ATC with 1 lakh rupees the benefit, and then recently on 2014 onwards it became 1,50,000 rupees of benefit. So, although we know that equity ELSS funds are a type of equity funds, there is a difference between the two because of the regulatory aspects. So first is ELSS funds have a locking period of 3 years. The investor cannot redeem the fund for 3 years, whereas diversified equity funds have no locking period. So the investor is free to enter and exit the fund anytime he wants. And similarly, another regulatory imposition is that the net assets invested into equity in case of ELSS funds are at 80% of the net assets of the fund, and then 65% in case of diversified equity funds. Although it was 50% till from May to 6th, they made it 65% thereon. So now diversified equity funds are 65% at all times, and ELSS funds 80% at all times. So coming to the relevance of the topic, so ELSS when proposed in the budget was envisaged as a means of inducing small investors into equity markets by investing through equity mutual funds. So the purpose was to incentivize investors and move them back out of debt investments, because government is feeling that a lot of investments are flowing only towards fixed income securities. That was actually the speech of the finance minister of the budget. That's exactly why he noted this particular ELSS concept. So ELSS funds have been in existence from 1991 onwards, the history of over 25 years now. And it's very pertinent to apprise, I felt it's very pertinent to apprise the success in terms of achieving this objective of helping investors move away from fixed income securities, or to a certain extent, so that they can actually earn better and higher real returns. So ELSS, as we understand the tax saving mutual fund investment, there are a number of other investments which give a similar benefit to the investor as ELSS mutual fund under Section 80C at this point. So the question arises as to the preference of the investor for ELSS funds vis-a-vis other tax saving mutual funds. What kind of preference does he have with regard to the tax saving schemes? Is one question that I actually wanted to answer for find an answer to. And that preference of the investor could actually stem, I thought, was from investment performance of the fund, which is known to him, or his perception towards the investment in general. So apart from this, the relevance also stems from the fact that ELSS funds are a type of diversified equity funds, because the investment universe is similar except for the percentage allocation as well as the locking period. So apart from these two differences, the investment universe is the same. So higher allocation, 80% as against 65%, and the locking period apparently makes ELSS funds a riskier investment when compared with diversified funds on the face of it. So the question arises for investor, or from even from my side, was does ELSS funds provide a better risk-adjusted return as compared to diversified equity funds because of these factors? That's exactly what my question was. So mutual funds being a relative return product under returns are linked to the market, a comparison of investment performance with benchmark index also becomes essential. And I also wanted to have that in place. So coming to literature, economic research in mutual funds has been consistent across various areas. And from the decade 1960, we have a number of literature available on performance analysis, persistence, investment style, return attribution, and all that. Fund flows as well as investor perception and the behavior also. So based on my topic of study, I have reviewed 24 international papers that are related to my area. And then also, because I'm studying Indian mutual funds, I have reviewed 23 papers on investment performance, closely related to my work, and then 34 papers on investors' perception. The papers which actually come very close to my area of research is these. So this paper actually tries to evaluate the performance of tax-oriented funds, but the gap here is that they have been only comparing within they comparing fund scheme-wise. So the study has not actually considered it to be a group. The study is always on the individual scheme, the performance of one scheme as against the other. And the benchmark used was one benchmark, which is BS Sensitive Index. Similarly, even this paper related to my paper was based on individual scheme performance rather than as a sector, what you call a type of mutual fund. Similarly, perception factors. There have been studies on investor perception, but mostly it was based on demographic factors of awareness, how demographics affect awareness and investment satisfaction, and identifying factors relating to investors' perception, again mostly based on demographic factors. So research gap that I could actually formulate was ELSS funds, yes, are a part of diversified funds, but the research papers do not distinguish ELSS funds from diversified equity funds. So we club it as one group and then try to evaluate the performance. And one single index is normally used for benchmarking, whereas funds themselves have selected a range of 7 benchmarks for their performance benchmarking. So gap exists with regard to the investment performance evaluation of ELSS funds as a group, as against diversified equity funds as a group and other market indexes as a group. So with regard to investor perception, literature is available in abundance with regard to perception of investors towards mutual funds in general. So gaps exist in the perception of investors towards ELSS funds as investment alternative. This is the perception of investors with regard to diversified equity funds. What is their perception with regard to both these funds? Take it together. So do they feel that their diversified fund is more riskier or ELSS funds more riskier, or do they have no perception? There is also one area of gap that I found in the research. And then what is the preference assigned by investors to ELSS funds as against the range of investments available under agency of income tax act? So objectives of the study have been these. The first objective is to compare and evaluate the investment performance of ELSS mutual funds with other diversified equity funds. The second was to compare and evaluate the investment performance of ELSS funds with benchmark indexes as well as the relevant benchmark indexes. The third is to identify additional risks, if any, faced by ELSS funds as compared to diversified equity funds. The fourth was to analyze the risk-reward perception of individual investors towards ELSS funds as compared to diversified equity funds. It's about risk-reward perception. And fifthly, to analyze the investor perception with regard to preference of ELSS investments as compared to other tax-saving investments. So, research questions are broadly based objectives have been these based on the investor or on the outlook of the investor. ELSS question is, do ELSS funds provide returns commensurate with the risk that is undertaking? Is investment performance of ELSS funds superior to diversified mutual funds? So do ELSS funds outperform the benchmark index or not? Are there additional risks in investing in ELSS funds as compared to diversified equity funds? So these are the questions that could actually be from the investor's point of view or outlook. From AMC point of view, the questions that were framed was, is there enough awareness among investors regarding ELSS funds as a tax-saving investment? What is the perception of investors regarding ELSS funds? So do investors perceive higher risk investing in ELSS funds as against diversified funds or not? Are existing investors happy with the performance of ELSS funds? So what is the preference assigned by ELSS investors as against other tax-saving investments, and what factors influence the selection of the fund? From the regulatory point of view, I thought the questions that appropriate are is locking period of 3 years appropriate, and what do investors feel about this locking period? Is a dedicated reduction of ATC make this investment scheme more preferable or not? Is differentiation between diversified equity ELSS funds justified? And what are the changes to ELSS regulations can make them more attractive? So these questions is what I actually got with regard to regulatory outlook. The hypothesis framed are the null hypothesis actually, sorry for that. The null hypothesis, there is no significant difference in average Sharpe ratio of ELSS growth funds and diversified funds. I will speak about these measures methodology. There is no significant difference in the average ordinal ratio of ELSS growth funds as against diversified equity funds. And there is no significant difference in the average Jensen's alpha of diversified funds as against diversified funds and benchmark indexes. Fourth hypothesis was, null hypothesis was, there is no significant difference in investors' perception of risk in case of ELSS funds as compared to diversified equity funds. And similarly, there is no significant difference in the investor perception of return of ELSS funds as against diversified equity funds. And lastly, there is no significant difference in investors' preference towards ELSS funds as compared to other tax-saving investments. For objective 1, 2, and 3, I have used secondary data, and for objective 4 and 5, I used primary data. The secondary data was taken in this manner. There were almost 50 ELSS funds as of 31st March 2013, of which 43 of them had a track record of 3 years. So I have selected all the 43 funds which had a track record of 3 years. And for the evaluation of investment performance, I have taken benchmark indexes, 7 benchmark indexes, which were the benchmarks of individual ELSS funds. So different funds have different benchmarks, so I took all of them for the study. So investment performance is also compared against a set of diversified equity funds. Sample diversified funds were considered based on the highest AUM as on 31st March 2013, with minimum 3 years of track record, and then covering 9 AMCs, top 9 AMCs. So these are the 12 diversified funds that were considered for the study. The second data related to April 2000 to March 2013, although ELSS fund existed from 1992 onwards, for the sake of study, I considered 2000 to 2013. The reason that I attribute is that when ELSS were actually formulated, they were formulated as the closed-ended funds. In 1999 onwards, actually it became open-ended funds, and because of closed-ended nature, the funds actually were not having the succession, in the sense that they getting regreened. So I consider only those funds are active and live as on 31st March 2013. So data of NAV of ELSS funds and diversified funds are sourced from AS Mutual Fund database software. Benchmark index is sourced from exchange websites, and Microsoft Excel was used for calculations and spaces for analysis of and testing of hypotheses. So primary data was collected from a structured questionnaire from a sample of 534 retail investors from Bangalore and suburban area. The sample had 382 investors with ELSS investment experience. So they actually invested in ELSS funds, and then 150 investors had no ELSS investment experience. Although they invest in other tax-saving investments, but not in ELSS funds. So of this 382 investors, 97 of them are from suburban and others are from urban areas. So purposive sampling was adopted because I need to get to investors to invest in tax-saving schemes. So I have to select the kind of samples that actually wanted, so purposive sampling was adopted. 2 structured questionnaires were adopted, one for investor category and another for non-investor category. Investor category had 25 questions, and then non-investor had 15 questions. Methodology adopted for secondary data analysis was based on these 4 relevant ratios, which are very practical and widely applied even in practical markets. Mutual funds still apply these measures today. So Sharpe ratio being return to volatility ratio based on standard deviation of total risk of the fund. So it tells the risk premium on per unit of risk undertaken. Similarly, Traynor ratio talks about volatility, and then based on beta or market risk, it tells us the return earned per unit of market risk undertaken. And similarly, Jensen's alpha talks about fundamental stability over and above the market performance, and then Traynor ratio considering downside risk of the investment. It provides us with the risk of premium on for a unit of downside risk undertaken. So hypothesis framed around the secondary data was tested using Wells 2 sample t-test. Coming to primary on the kind of data that I had. So independent sample magnitude test and score test, number test, and frequency analysis, and the person right steps to understand the ranking between the investments. So my study has been limitations. I have considered data only from 001 to 1213. Also, there is a funds in existence from 1992 onwards. My study actually has a limitation of survivorship bias. So sample ELSS funds considered, all those funds are still active on the 31st March 2013. So my outlook, my study is based on the investment performance of the fund, the ability of the fund to provide capital appreciation. So I have focused only on growth schemes of the funds. So I have not considered dividend options, dividend schemes of the funds. So the investment performance evaluation is all based on NAV figures based, which are actually a net of the fund costs. And the primary data required is collected to structured questionnaire of investors and then around Bangalore and suburban areas. So coming to the results of investment performance, so just to give a snapshot of the returns from 01 to 1213. As you can see, ELSS funds provide an average of 14.92% over this 13-year period, as compared to some of the financial investments which actually provide ATC benefit, and gold is only for comparison being provided there, and then we have GDP inflation rates. So it's very apparent that the ELSS fund actually almost provided twice here. This is the graph of average returns, the quarterly average returns of the fund for the 13-year period. So as you can see here, the performance of ELSS funds definitely has been underperforming with regard to diversified funds. Diversified funds all along have been outperforming ELSS funds. In comparison to the market, we come to a graph that the ELSS funds for a period of time actually outperformed the market and then later on underperformed. This is outperformance and of the diversified and quarterly average based on quarterly average returns, year-wise and fund-wise. So what we come to understand from this is that as a category, ELSS funds, 34% of the ELSS funds could only outperform the diversified funds. So 34% of the ELSS funds could outperform the diversified funds as a category. And similarly, compared to market indexes, the performance is better. So 55% of the ELSS funds could outperform the market as a category, benchmark index as a category. So as mutual funds, the ELSS funds have a locking period of 3 years, as compared to WISE, who actually have a CAGR on a 3-year basis. So if an investor actually locks in his money for 3 years, what could be returned over time? And this graph is based on the 3-year rolling CAGR for the investor. So it's very clear also that diversified funds as a category have outperformed the ELSS funds, and performance of ELSS is similar to that of similar kind of what we call average returns, outperforming index for a certain period of time and then underperforming later on. So this is the return pattern the investor would actually earn through an SIP investment, because in mutual funds, systematic investment plan is very popular. So people invest a small amount of money regularly. So this has been the pattern of the returns that they generated for 1 year to 13-year time period. The person invests every quarter in X amount of money at the beginning of the quarter, how much return would have earned over time. So even here we find that there is a big gap between the returns of diversified equity funds and then ELSS funds. With regard to the total risk undertaken by the ELSS funds, based on standard deviation, this has been the graph of the standard deviation of the 3 investments, wherein the numbers show that ELSS funds have a lesser standard deviation as compared to the other 2. This is the graph of Sharpe ratio for this 13-year period. risk premium on per unit of total risk undertaken. And this is the softener ratio risk premium on per unit of downside risk undertaken for the 13-year period. To summarize the results, investment performance, we can see that the quarterly average returns as a category, the 13-year period, ELSS provided 3.9% per quarter as against diversified funds 3.9% and market indexes 5.6%. 13-year average, annualized average of diversified funds is 21.3% and 12.65% for ELSS funds. Rolling CAGR highest was 59.61% for 3-year period in ELSS and lowest of 17.99%. That's actually underperforming diversified funds. Diversified funds are here maximum CAGR of 77% and the lower of only 7.24%. So quarterly standard deviation, we find that ELSS category has 12.92% standard deviation as compared to 12.02% of diversified funds. The Sharpe ratio and softener ratio of ELSS funds has been negative. That means they were not able to actually make a positive premium over the 13-year period. Whereas the diversified equity funds have a positive Sharpe ratio of 0.18 and 0.26 per quarter. So comparing beta as a measure of as an indicator of market risk, we find that the market risk undertaken by diversified funds compared to taking into account all the indexes, diversified funds has a higher market risk as compared to ELSS fund. ELSS fund actually had lesser market risk. And as well being the measure of diversification, we find that ELSS funds comparing taking into account all the indexes will be less diversified as compared to diversified equity funds. The diversified funds actually had a higher R square, telling us that they are more diversified to any index that matter as compared to ELSS funds. The Reynolds ratio again in case of ELSS funds is negative except for Nifty, all the Nifty indexes, Nifty 100, 500, whereas diversified equity funds have all of them have against all indexes a positive Reynolds ratio. This is premium for unit of market risk undertaken. And then Jensen's alpha of ELSS funds have been positive except for Nifty and NSE 100. Whereas Jensen's alpha, the fund manager performance in case of diversified funds have all been positive and significantly higher than ELSS funds. Coming to other aspects of risk with regard to ELSS fund, diversified fund is one factor of fund allocation. So although we are regulation-wise 65%, 80% is the mandatory allocation, we find that over time these were the allocations made by the respective funds. ELSS funds have on average invested 90.6% of their money to equity, and then diversified funds almost similar, 89.58% of their money to equity. Fund allocation has almost been similar in case of both the funds, both the fund types. Considering expense ratios, again risk aspect for the investor because it is into its return. I found that ELSS funds have been charging a higher fund expenses as compared to diversified equity funds. Average is 2.31% for ELSS funds as compared to 1.97% of diversified equity funds. So expense ratio would actually be higher because of turnover. That's why I actually looked into turnover aspect also. So if you take the average of both are similar, that means that turnover-wise the funds are similar nature. They are actually having almost turnover of 0.97, almost the average, and there is no difference with regard to the turnover of both these types of categories. Coming to the testing of hypothesis, which I had said, hypothesis 1 and 2, for objective 1 and 2. So with regard to diversified funds, Wells-T test was actually used, which is a test adopted to compare the means of two groups which have unequal sizes and unequal variances. So I found that the p-value when compared with diversified funds were all significant, and compared with ELSS when compared with market benchmark, Sharpe market benchmark and softener benchmark was not significant. leading to the conclusion that the returns provided by ELSS funds and markets are similar. There's a significant difference, whereas there's a significant difference in case of diversified funds and ELSS funds. So coming to the results of investor perception, moving on to my quest for understanding the demographic characteristics, I did a hypothesis test based on demographic characteristics of the samples connected. So I tested that with using these tests depending on the data. So based on gender, age, education qualification, and occupation, and multi-status and average of the demographic characteristics, I compared mutual fund investment and ELSS fund. That means there is any difference between the perception of investors in demographic characteristics with regard to diversified funds and the ELSS funds. So what I could make out is the preference for mutual funds is more in case of males as compared to females with regard to diversified funds, and that doesn't exist in case of ELSS funds. In terms of tax savings, they are similar. They have some kind of understanding. With regard to age, preference in mutual funds is more in younger population when it comes to mutual funds, and again in ELSS funds that is not evident. So they are saving tax for the purpose of tax in ELSS funds. And coming to educational qualification, preference for mutual funds is more in postgraduates and graduates in case of mutual funds, but that's not the case in ELSS funds. So similarly, occupation preference in mutual funds is more in salary and business classes, whereas the ELSS funds there is no such evidence. Marital status does not play any role with regard to this, either the diversified funds or ELSS funds. Monthly average savings, we find that the preference for ELSS funds is more in high savings group than low savings group, and that's not the case in case of mutual funds. So coming to the preference of investment between investment in non-investor categories. So I have two categories of respondents. The one those with investment experience in ELSS funds and those with no investment experience in ELSS funds. So with regard to preference of investments in general, I would find that preference is more in case of non-investor category into post office savings. So once he has experience of mutual fund and ELSS investments, his preference for mutual post office savings has come down or is low. The investors actually have non-investors have actually have a low preference for post office savings investment. Preference in case of equity shares, again, investor category had a more higher preference for equity shares as compared to others, as compared to non-investors, and that's not the case with the other investment avenues, gold, silver, life insurance, and all that. Similarly, credit test with regard to urban and semi-urban investors. With regard to bank FD, I found that preference is more in semi-urban than in urban areas. Post office savings, again, preference is more in semi-urban area. Equity shares, preference in semi-urban is lesser and urban is more. So gold and silver, again, preference is lesser in semi-urban. And life insurance preference is lesser in semi-urban areas. With regard to investment attributes, what they think is important with regard to investment, comparison between investor and non-investor categories, considering risk as an attribute, this attribute was of lesser importance to investors than non-investors. So investors into what we understand is investors into ELSS funds had a more understanding of the market, so their perception of the ELSS funds is lower as compared to non-investors. And similarly, convenience was of lesser importance to investors than non-investors. The same study was done between urban and semi-urban investors. Returns were given more importance by semi-urban investors than urban investors. Risk is given more importance by semi-urban than urban. And the preference of non-investments is more, preference for knowledge of the investment is more in case of urban than semi-urban investors. Similarly, preference of tax-saving investments, coming tax-saving investments in urban and semi-urban investors, preference for ELSS funds is lesser in semi-urban areas, and Others actually there's no difference between the preferences. Similarly, in NSC, preference is higher in case of single income area, the post office savings investment. Coming to the hypothesizing of secondary data, with regard to the perception of risk of investors. So what the investors feel when they invest in real estate funds, do they feel it as risky or there is more risk or less risk? This test was done. This was based on mandatory U test. What we understand is the null hypothesis is there. Perception of risk is lesser in case of real estate funds than diversified equity funds. So when compared with diversified equity funds, the investors feel that real estate funds are less riskier. So similarly, when taking into account the average returns perspective, so the test was made based on independent samples, Homer test, retained null hypothesis, with no difference. That means there is no difference in the perception of investors with regard to returns. Their returns aspiration is similar in case of both statistically. Coming to hypothesis 5, objective 5 with regard to returns of investors for real investment as compared to other tax-saving investments. This was based on the Friedman test, which is a test to compare median ranks of dependent samples. So null hypothesis rejected. Investors do not have the same kind of preference across different investment categories. We find that the median rank of bank fixed deposits is higher as compared to real estate funds. So real estate funds are ranked after bank FD, life insurance, and NPS. So to get to know more about their preferences, I did the Wilcoxon sign rank test. Taking into account the non-investors categories preference for ETC investments or tax-saving investments, I again did the preference to analysis of variance by ranks. Again, here the significance 0, did null hypothesis. So preference here again is for bank fixed deposits as compared to real estate funds. Real estate funds have actually the least preference when coming to non-investors. So coming to the findings based on objective 1, so 34% real estate funds could outperform the diversified equity fund category. On absolute return basis, real estate funds have underperformed the diversified equity funds category by 1.31% per quarter. Only 39% of the real estate funds could actually outperform the Sharpe ratio of diversified equity funds as a category. And similarly, 36% real estate funds would outperform diversified equity fund category based on Sharpe's ratio. When compared to index, 74% real estate funds underperform Jensen's alpha of diversified equity funds based on BC Sensex, and 71% of real estate funds underperformed the Jensen's alpha of diversified equity funds category based on NSBT. So null hypothesis of no difference in the performance of Sharpe's, and Jensen ratio was tested, and then found that diversified funds had higher performance as compared to real estate funds. And when compared to the market, real estate funds were performing on par with the market. So with regard to the market, 55% of real estate funds could outperform the market indexes. Similarly, 65% actually real estate funds will also be able to provide risk-adjusted return in terms of Sharpe ratio. And similarly, 53% of real estate funds would outperform the market based on downside risk. So null hypothesis of no difference in risk-adjusted performance based on Sharpe and Sharpe was tested, and then the p-value was found not significant, and null hypothesis thing. So there is no difference in the performance between real estate and market based on Sharpe and Sharpe ratio. Coming to option number 3, other risks involved for the investor of real estate based on fund allocation, fund expense, and average portfolio turnover. Based on the numbers that you have seen, the fund allocation for diversified and real estate funds are similar. So there is no higher risk allocation in real estate funds as compared to diversified equity funds. Fund expense ratio has been a matter of concern. ISS funds have been charging investors a higher fund expense ratio as compared to diversity equity funds. And then corporate turnover again, which is a matter of risk for the investor, uh, uh, is similar when compared to diversity equity funds. Coming to objective 4, with regard to perception of investors. So null hypothesis of investors' perception towards risk in ISS funds being equal to diversity equity funds was tested. The p-value was found significant, leading to rejection of null hypothesis. So the investors' perception between ISS funds risk and the diversified fund risk are not similar; they have a difference. And ISS investors actually ISS were perceived as a lesser risk investment as compared to diversified. Null hypothesis of investors' expectation on average returns were also tested. The p-value was found not significant. So there is no difference between expectation of returns these two categories. Coming to objective number 4, the preference of non-investor category towards tax-saving investments was again tested, and then the p-value was significant and then was rejected. This showed that respondents' preference for tax-saving investments were not similar. The highest preference, as we see from the tests, were that 5